Hi, I'm Erik Voss, and Aquaman was a lot of fun. For the more cynical viewer, it may not fix everything that you've taken issue with in the DC movies, but it's a good reminder that from Finding Nemo to The Little Mermaid to SpongeBob, under the sea, it's a party. Just be glad film only requires 2 senses, because while it looks real pretty, in real life the ocean stinks. I'm gonna break down Aquaman scene by scene for all the interesting details director James Wan snuck into the movie that you might have overlooked, Easter eggs to Wan's past work into the DC comics, and all the literary and mythology influences in this film. And spoiler warning, in case you haven't seen the movie yet and me telling you more about it ruins your life. Okay, this film opens with Thomas Curry battening down the hatches of his lighthouse in Amnesty Bay. This, of course, is where Aquaman's human father, Thomas Curry, lives in the New 52 comics. He's played here by Tamara Morrison, who played Jango Fett in Star Wars Attack of the Clones. He sees down below strewn on the rocks is Queen Atlanna, Nicole Kidman. The imagery here could be a reference to Greek mythology, which is a big part of the inspiration of the Aquaman character. The figure Andromeda was chained to the rocks by the sea to be fed to a monster from the sea god Poseidon as punishment for her mother Cassiopeia's hubris. So not only does Atlanta's visuals here allude to Andromeda, she also suffers a similar fate, with the Atlanteans sacrificing her by throwing her to the monsters of the trench. During this, we hear the voiceover from their future son, Arthur Curry, Aquaman, played by Jason Momoa. He recites this quote, "Put 2 ships in the open sea without wind or tide and they will come together." He says this was written by Jules Verne. He's the author of several classics, including 20,000 Leagues Under the Sea. And I think what's most interesting, if you look up the full quote, Verne goes on to say, place 2 enemies in the midst of a crowd and they will inevitably meet. So this quote kind of applies to both the inevitability of Tom and Atlanta's meet cute, but also the meet not so cute between Aquaman and Black Manta, who declares we were bound to meet at some point. Inside the lighthouse, a TV plays an old TV show of a submarine. This is actually the 60s series Stingray, which also features underwater races of creatures and a kingdom ruled by a tyrant, just like in this movie. Atlanta is literally a fish out of water here, and her behavior here seems largely influenced by Daryl Hannah's mermaid character in the Tom Hanks rom-com movie Splash. But Atlanta and this Tom also fall in love, and if you look around the home they raised baby Arthur in, you can see a few interesting Easter eggs. First, the snow globe sits upon this book. If you look closely at the title, this is The Dunwich Horror by H.P. Lovecraft. James Wan mentioned Lovecraft as a huge influence on his horror imagery as a film director. Lovecraft is known for gargantuan, looming, tentacled monsters lurking in the shadows of the cosmos or the depths of the ocean. On a personal level, he's also known for being a pretty bad human being, so even when it comes to authors, don't meet your heroes. Lovecraft's most well-known monster is Cthulhu, a monster who has inspired all kinds of things that we've seen in shows like Stranger Things, and as we'll see later, the massive creature of this movie, the Carathin, 100% Lovecraftian in its design. Also on the side table, look at this object. It looks like some kind of shell-based decor, but it looks a lot like a mother box. Remember, mother box were the 3 MacGuffin objects that Steppenwolf used in Batman v Superman and Justice League to open a wormhole and arrive to Earth. The decoration could be a recreation of the mother box in Atlantis, which they still possessed at this point in the timeline before Steppenwolf would have arrived to steal it. Also behind baby Arthur in the background, there's a Pinocchio marionette toy. Pinocchio is a weirdly important reference point in this movie. Arthur brings him up later when he and Mira hide inside the whale, and that kid in the Sicilian town gives Mira the Pinocchio book. We also learn that Tom chose to name Arthur after King Arthur from the Old English legend. We will see in this movie how Aquaman's story is definitely based on Arthurian mythology, an outcast who proves his worth by pulling a sword from a stone and claiming his rightful place on the throne. Then we see a slightly older Arthur on a field trip to the Boston Aquarium, and notice how the 2 bullies mock Arthur for talking to fish. Bruce Wayne makes the same jab to Arthur in Justice League.
I hear you can talk to fish.
Yes, Aquaman does famously communicate with fish. I actually like how this scene shows young Arthur using sound waves, evoking Aquaman's telepathy in the Super Friends cartoon. But rather than being a goofy gimmick in this movie, this telepathy actually ends up being the one thing to redeem Aquaman later in the film. More on that later. Then adult Aquaman shows up. He rescues a hijacked submarine, and he gets introduced to the villain Black Manta, David Hyde in the comics, played by Yahya Abdul-Mateen II. His father tells him the story of his grandfather, who was one of the frogmen in World War II, but the veteran wasn't properly honored after the war. The dagger that David's father gives him is a symbol of this betrayal and the whole Manta family legacy of piracy. Meanwhile, notice the ancestry token that Aquaman wears, this green necklace. Now this is a Maori Toki jade necklace. Kind of like the tattoos on Momoa's torso, this necklace is a nod to his Polynesian ancestry. We learn later that the reason Black Manta and his crew hijacked this sub was out of a conspiracy with Orm to use a human submarine in a false flag attack against the Atlanteans to lure them into war. Now, right before this attack happens, we meet Orm, current ruler of Atlantis, Arthur's half-brother played by Patrick Wilson. He rides an armored tylosaur, which is a kind of sea crocodile thing, and he and his forces meet with the kingdom of Zebul, ruled by King Nereus, Dolph Lundgren. We also meet Orm's advisor, Volko, played by Willem Dafoe. All during this time, he's been secretly training Arthur Curry. Now, in total, there are 7 kingdoms: Atlantis, Zebul, the Fisherman Kingdom, the Brine, the Trench, the Deserters, and the mysterious Hidden Kingdom. Orm needs 4 out of the 7 to agree to go to war against the land dwellers. And I like how in this scene that Orm and Nereus just simply talk to each other, with their voices sounding normal under the water. That was a conscious decision by James Wan to do away with the whole weird air bubbles from Justice League. So this false flag submarine attack leads to Orm's worldwide shoreline attack, a tidal wave hurling warships and trash back to the land. Arthur and his father are saved by Mera, Amber Heard, returning from Justice League. She reminds Arthur that he helped defeat Steppenwolf. This is this movie's one reference to the events of Justice League. Now, the news coverage of this tidal wave features a news talk show with Dr. Stephen Shin, played by Randall Park. He's a marine biologist and a conspiracy theorist obsessed with Atlantis. In the New 52 comics, he plays an important mentor role to Arthur Curry, and he actually shows up in this movie's post-credits scene. I made a whole other video about that, go check it out. As Arthur prepares to join Mera to help prevent this whole war, we learn in the flashback that Volko taught him everything he needs to know about being an Atlantean, the Trident water shield attack that he uses to beat Orm later, but also that his Atlantean eyes can change to be able to connect with ocean life. This actually explains why his eyes changed to the color yellow as a kid, and why normal humans can't see the undersea kingdom. Arthur and Mera meet with Volko in a secret hideout in a sunken ship. Look closely at the ocean floor. There's a creepy little doll among the who's its and what's its galore. This is actually an Annabelle doll, thrown in the set by director James Wan as an Easter egg nod to his work in the Conjuring and Annabelle film series. Volko tells them about the mythical Trident of Atlan. Now, the weapon Aquaman has been using so far that we saw in Batman v Superman and in Justice League, it's actually a quindent. It's the one carried by his mother, Atlanta. Meanwhile, the classic Trident of Aquaman is the thing that he's after in this movie. And this whole story of how it was forged from the power of Poseidon, this seems adapted from an object known as the Dead King's Scepter in the Aquaman comics. Atlan forged the Dead King's Scepter to defend against his own brother, Orin. Now, this leads to Arthur's arrest. He demands trial by combat to the Ring of Fire. It's a big gladiator arena. And during this fight, there's a quick shot of an awesome octopus playing the drums. This is actually a character from the comics, Topo. It's an octopus that Aquaman hangs out with. Director James Wan said that Topo would play lots of instruments at once, and he joked that he wanted the octo drummer to hook up with that guitar flame guy from Mad Max Fury Road. Arthur loses the duel when Orm breaks their mother's quindent, and he and Mera escape and they seek out the Deserter Kingdom in the Sahara. Now, the pilot of this cargo plane may look familiar to you. This is Lee Winnell, James Wan's longtime collaborator and co-writer and star of the original Saw movie. Their discovery of these ruins underneath the Saharan dunes leads them to plug in this Amazon Echo-y cylinder thing, which requires a drop of water to activate. Now, this seems like a nod to the climax of the movie The Fifth Element, with the ancient ruins and devices that worked a real similar way. Now, during the film, we get a flashback to the heyday of Atlantis, and it looks amazing. The design features some great attention to detail. The architecture looks inspired by classic Roman structures, with an aqueduct. You can also see a Colosseum. And if you look closely, there's a structure in the shape of Aquaman's A sigil, revealing its origin. So I guess this logo didn't come from an email attachment stolen from Lex Luthor's archives. Orm takes over the fisherman army with a coup, and he arms Black Manta with new weaponry and soldiers. And when Black Manta's helmet misfires, he quips, "I think I'm gonna need a bigger helmet." An obvious nod to the famous line from Steven Spielberg's Jaws.
You're gonna need a bigger boat.
Arthur and Mera head to Sicily, where Arthur realizes Atlan's bottle needs to be viewed as a telescope through the eye of an ancient statue of King Romulus. Now, Romulus was a real king. He was the first king of Rome. According to legend, he feuded with his brother Remus. And I think this historical reference is meant to reflect the brother relationship between Arthur and Orm. As Arthur and Mera approach the trench, they're attacked by the terrifying trench monsters. And you can see here why James Wan wanted to do this movie. These beasts allowed him to set up some really fun jump scares. Wan did say that he was careful to limit his horror tendencies to certain visuals like this one, rather than the whole movie feeling like a horror downer tone. Their journey through the trench leads them to the Hidden Kingdom, a surreal utopia where they learn Atlanta is still alive. I guess that makes it the second time this year a 90s Batman love interest superhero mommy wound up alive but gray-haired in a dream world on the other side of a bottomless pit. Eyes on your own papers, Hollywood Studios. Arthur journeys through the waterfall to retrieve Atlan's trident, and he must slay the dragon, so to speak. In this case, it's this Lovecraftian giant Carathan. And this creature is voiced by, of all people, Julie Andrews. Amazing. And while other heroes have failed, the one thing that saves Arthur, that wins over this giant beast, is his ability to talk to fish. Way to turn something kind of dumb into a point of pride, James Wan. Arthur completes his Arthurian legend, he pulls a trident from the stone, he gets his sweet new green and orange scaly armor, and he arrives mid-battle to defeat Orm. One last little Easter egg: when Orm begs Arthur to show him no mercy, Patrick Wilson screams in anguish, "Kill me!" This could be a wink to the ending of the movie The Watchmen, in which Patrick Wilson, of course, played Night Owl, and he watched in horror as Rorschach begged for execution from Dr. Manhattan in the exact same way. Do it! How do you guys think Aquaman ranks among the DCEU films? Me? I kind of liked it. I think it's up there with Man of Steel and Wonder Woman. Didn't feel too overambitious like Batman v Superman or Justice League, and it certainly wasn't the train wreck that Suicide Squad was. Comment down below with your thoughts, and follow New Rockstars on Twitter at New Rockstars. Follow me on Twitter and Instagram at EA Voss. Subscribe to New Rockstars for more deep dives into everything you love. Damn, I said dive. I was hoping to make it through an Aquaman video without making one corny, cringy, aquatic verb. I guess I'll go ask the Hollywood Reporter for a job where I can shore up a whale of a headline about how the tides are turning over at Warner Brothers DC division. Kill me!